Hey, gang, the Excite Center at Parks Casino, the casino of choice for this program. Parks Casino, this is how you win. Pennsylvania's #1 casino, so close to anywhere if you're in the northeastern part of the United States. The Street Road exit off I-95 and the Pennsylvania Turnpike, less than 2 hours from New York City, from Brooklyn, from Staten Island, less than 90 minutes from Delaware and the South Central and Northern New Jersey communities. The Excite Center, that's the state-of-the-art facility where all the A-listers come, and so many good things are upcoming. The a cappella sounds of Straight No Chaser, the return of R&B queens TLC, comedian Michael Blaustein is coming, Invincible, that's a tribute to Michael Jackson, Ezra Ray Hart, the lead singers from Sugar Ray, Better Than Ezra, and Tonic joined together for an incredible night, comedian Steve Trevino, Patti LaBelle, the homecoming, in the Philadelphia area, December 6th at Parks. Comedian Eric D'Alessandro, you can enjoy dinner and drinks before the show at the Liberty Bell Gastropub, Parks Grill Steakhouse, or Bamboo Noodle House. Parks Grill, Parks Everything, Parks Casino. Get your tickets, parkscasino.com. This is how you win. You got to be 21. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Time now for the headlines from the Tuesday, October 15 edition of the Smerconish.com daily newsletter. So the poll question today, Admiral Stavridis on the program, who better to talk about this issue than the former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO? Should the U.S. send an anti-missile system and 100 troops? That's the key part, because I think if I were simply saying, should the U.S. send an anti-missile system to Israel, people would say, yes, send them whatever hardware you've got. In the same way, that's what people have said about Ukraine. But no, the rub here, I think, is the 100 troops. The United States is sending one of its most advanced missile defense systems and about 100 U.S. troops, because they know how to operate it, to Israel, deepening the U.S. involvement in the escalating war in the Middle East amid U.S. expectations of this imminent Israeli assault against Iran. You know that Israel took out the head of Hezbollah in Lebanon. Iran responded. Israel was successful in repelling that attack. Next up is going to be another Israeli response to Iran. What is this THAAD system, THAAD? It's a defense system, one of the U.S. military's most powerful anti-missile weapons, capable of intercepting ballistic missiles at ranges of 150 to 200 kilometers. That's 93 to 124 miles, and with a near-perfect success rate in testing. You know, the issue here is one of, God forbid, what should happen if there's any loss of U.S. life? And this now escalates. Are we in it? Are we in it knee deep? And with 3 weeks to go before the election, this could be the greatest intangible. This could be the October surprise. These THAAD interceptors are kinetic, meaning that they take out incoming targets by colliding with them rather than exploding near the incoming warhead. According to a report from the Congressional Research Service, we've got 7 of these so-called batteries, each consisting of 6 truck-mounted launchers with 8 interceptors apiece, a powerful radar system, and a fire control and communications component. One of those prized batteries now being detached to Israel to help bolster its already impressive ability to counter incoming missiles following Iran's unprecedented attacks against Israel on April 13 and again on October 1. That's according to the Pentagon. So go vote at Smerconish.com and tell me what you think of our deployment of that system and 100 troops. Yesterday's poll question at Smerconish.com, we had a great conversation on air about it. If Kamala Harris loses, it'll be because of what? And you had to pick one. I gave you choices that included Joe Biden's late exit from the race, Kamala Harris's failure to differentiate from Biden, misogyny, racism, the media coverage of Trump, not choosing Josh Shapiro as a running mate, running too controlled of a campaign, the Electoral College, and Jill Stein. The Electoral College won with a plurality of votes, not differentiating, came in second position, meaning not differentiating from President Biden. I shared with you yesterday that a friend of mine, Peter Meltzer, he's an attorney in Philadelphia and he's an accomplished author. He sent me a note yesterday right before I went on air. And he said to me he didn't like the poll question because he thought that there needed to be an additional answer, namely that Harris is unqualified. And I don't agree with Peter that that's the proper choice that I should have had, because how can you say that somebody is unqualified who has been a state attorney general, a United States senator, and a vice president? I don't think you can say that. You can say that she's just not a good candidate. And I regret not including that into the mix. By the way, you know that we love the suggested poll questions. And somebody said, well, why isn't there a poll question asking if Donald Trump loses, why will Donald Trump lose? And I think the reason I haven't done it, I might, but I probably won't, is I would have difficulty coming up with different answers, because I think there's only one answer. If Donald Trump loses, it's because of Donald Trump. Too much chaos, too much lying, right? Too much tumult, too much instability, and people just wanting to move on from Donald Trump. Election, it ends 3 weeks from today. I keep saying that because I'm trying to couch my words. I don't know if we're going to know who wins 3 weeks from tonight. But my God, can you remember going back, those of you POTUS listeners, we've been talking about this for over a year. Well, in 2024, what's going to happen in 2024? Now we're 3 weeks out, and emotions are really at a fever pitch. Today, being a Tuesday, Jack Oman draws for Smerconish.com a great cartoon. They're controlling the weather, says Trump, with a storm on the horizon. As he looks at a computer screen, it says violent rhetoric, send in military on election day and promote misinformation. And then it's Trump saying, yeah, but they're controlling the weather. It's a reminder, by the way, if I can just say, as I'm looking at Jack Oman's brilliance, that not a day goes by that I don't receive multiple communications from Bob Terzak at Brilliant Graphics, because the printing process for the editorial cartoon book Smerconish 2024 is well underway. And I'm really learning a great deal about this process, not the least of which is that when you impose a deadline like we did, trying to get these things out for the holidays, fingers crossed, no guarantee, we are printing probably the first 2/3 of the book, because we already know the jacket, we know the foreword, we know the write-ups, and we know what the first of, it's going to be around 300 pages. We know the first 200 of those pages because those cartoons have already been drawn. But now, the struggle is to have 10,000 books printed, 10,244 to be specific, and then to await the final pages based on cartoons that have not yet been drawn. It makes it very confusing. But the good news is, and we continue to post videos in my social media, it's coming together beautifully. It's going to be gorgeous. 5 pounds, sit on your coffee table forever. And if you want to laugh or cry about this insane election cycle, you'll have ample opportunity to do so. Okay, more headlines now from the Tuesday edition of the newsletter, just sticking with the polling theme, if I may. David Plouffe, who ran the Obama campaign back in 2016, did an interview with New York Magazine saying a number of interesting things, not the least of which is that most public polls, according to Plouffe, are horseshit. That was his word choice. David Plouffe, senior advisor to the Harris-Walz campaign, because now he's in that tent. He discussed the campaign's internal polling in a podcast interview that was released. He said a number of interesting things, quote, "So I really can't speak to the public polls. I spend very little time looking at them," he said. "I just don't. Most of them are the word that I've already used. Some of them may be close, but here's his advice." Here's David Plouffe's advice. He said, if you see a poll that says Kamala Harris is up 4 to 5 points in one of the 7 battleground states, ignore it. And any poll that shows that Donald Trump is up like that, ignore it. This thing is very close. It is a margin of error race, says Plouffe. He said that he would rather be Harris than Trump at this stage of the race, though it remains very close. I have said that 10 days ago, if you said to me, which of the two would you rather be, I would have said Harris, because her launch was flawless, maybe a bit too controlled, but there were no gaffes, there were no major stumbles, and it just seemed like Democrats had enthusiasm. They coalesced around her. They came out of the convention with a head of steam. Trump, it appeared, was making a number of misfires, saying things that would cause you to scratch your head and say, well, there he goes again, and he must have just lost votes. But if you heard my analysis yesterday and on CNN, I think there's probably a method to his madness. And the reality is that she's not been able to close the deal. So it's like Harris has been brought right to the 50% margin and right to the 50% margin in the battleground states, but she's not been able to pull away. And now there seems to be a vibe of Donald Trump making up ground. I had the poll yesterday from NBC, which showed that he's gained 5 points in the last month. Does he now have momentum? What else is out there? ABC and Ipsos shows that Harris leads Trump among likely voters nationwide 50-48. 2 points, a 2-point race. That's what Hillary had in 2016. Biden had a 4-point margin in the popular vote. That was enough for him as sort of a tell to do what he needed to do in the battleground states. You got to be up 4, I think, is where she needs to be. NBC, Harris and Trump tied 48-48. CBS, YouGov, Harris leads Trump nationally among likely voters 51-48. So they're all saying the same thing. Nationally, the Real Clear Politics average says it's Harris by 1.7. However, in the battleground states, it's Trump 0.4 advantage. Now, here I think is a tell, and we've been talking about this, and we'll talk about it some more. The vice president is now sitting down today with Bret Baier, Fox News Channel's chief political anchor. And you know that there's been a lot of criticism that she hasn't done interviews in unfriendly waters. Well, this will be. And, I look at this and I say, the internal polling that Harris has, this is a change of strategy, right? This is not The View. This is not Howard Stern. This is not Stephen Colbert. This is not Charlemagne the God. This is a different setting. And for her to step out like that, where she's been so consistent and in protected or more protected environments, with the exception being 60 Minutes, this tells me that they must see some things that they have determined they need to do an interview like this. So does the Harris campaign believe that they've kind of maxed out and that now that pendulum might be slightly swinging to Donald Trump? I look at the interview with Bret Baier as a tell in that regard, that they think they've got a problem. By the way, I think that Bret Baier is probably the best, most likely draw at Fox if you're going to do that interview. My expectation, having watched him for a number of years, is that he's going to be fair. He's going to be sharp in his questioning. But I think that it's going to be a good forum. And if she can rise to that challenge, then maybe to the extent she's lost some momentum, she gets it back. Here's another consideration as we just think in the final 3 weeks, where are we? We've really not said much of anything in this cycle about third-party candidates. But the New York Times has an analysis today which says this: with a month to go before what is widely expected to be an extraordinarily close election, an extra element of unpredictability looms. In every battleground state, there is at least one third-party or independent presidential candidate on the ballot. None of these candidates will come anywhere close to winning the presidency. Jill Stein, the Green Party nominee, is polling at about 1% nationally, according to the New York Times. Same with Chase Oliver, the Libertarian candidate. But the presence on the ballot in just a couple of states could take enough votes away from a major party candidate to tip the balance and create a spoiler effect. And if you're watching on YouTube, you're looking right now at a chart which is really well done, and it shows you the 7 battleground states: Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, and who among them among the third-party candidates, is on those ballots. Wisconsin, you get Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Jill Stein, Chase Oliver from the Libertarian Party, and you get Cornel West. So in Wisconsin, there are 4 other choices. In contrast, in Pennsylvania, you get Jill Stein and you get the Libertarian Party candidate Chase Oliver, but you don't get Cornel West and you don't get Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And of course, everybody knows Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has withdrawn tried to take his name off the ballot in battleground states, and he's thrown his lot with Donald Trump. But we should at least mention the factor, the third party factor, because if it's a game of inches, that might matter. My favorite story, I think, today in the newsletter comes from the Washington Post. It, too, pertains to a partisan divide, but this is a partisan divide in fast food. In other words, the data crunchers at the Washington Post have taken a look at campaign expenditures for Republicans and Democrats. Do political campaigns know something about America's restaurant scene that we don't? Do Republicans and Democrats dine differently? Thus began our effort to glean gems of dining wisdom from the seemingly mundane depths of the nation's campaign finance reports. So what they've done is they've scoured the reports for every fast food-related receipt filed between January of 2023 and September 20 of 2024, turning up bills for everything from coffee runs to high-dollar catered affairs. With a little spade work, we found evidence that food has played a starring role at key moments in the race. To wrap our arms, says the Post, around a bigger question, where the campaigns spend the most money, they limited their analysis to places that racked up at least $5,000 in campaign spending, coming up with a list of roughly 500 popular restaurants and food purveyors involving more than 21,000 receipts where they collected $13 million. So here we go. Where do they like to eat? For Trump, the answer is frequently McDonald's. His campaign is responsible for virtually all of the $35,900 that federal candidates have spent on fast food at McDonald's, 31,000 or about 86%. Overall, Republicans have spent 28 times as much as Democrats at the Golden Arches. Republican campaigns also show a huge preference for Chick-fil-A, spending more than $200,000 at the Atlanta-based fried chicken chain with Christian roots. That is 20 times more than Democrats. Overall, GOP campaigns outspent Democrats 18-1 at fast food joints. Where then are Democratic campaigns turning in receipts to feed their campaign apparatus in terms of food preferences? Panera Bread, Whole Foods, Chipotle, DeMayo's Pizza, I'm not familiar with it, and Capriotti's Sandwich Shop. Republicans spend more money at Shake Shack, Qdoba, and the sandwich joint Jimmy John's, while Democrats are responsible for the majority of campaign spending at Sweet Green, Corner Bakery, and I never know how to say this, although I've been there and I like it, Le Pain Quotidien. How did I do with that? Who the hell knows? And by the way, it fits a stereotype, right? If I said to you, which campaign is spending more at Sweet Green, which campaign is spending more at McDonald's, you would have nailed it. It's like the old Cracker Barrel Whole Foods that I often use in my speaking when talking about self-sorting amidst this climate of polarization. One more, because now I've got McDonald's on the brain, and when you think of the presidential candidates and McDonald's, yes, you think of Donald Trump, but you know who else you think about if you remember the 90s and SNL? You think about Bill Clinton. So this is really funny, at least to me. Former President Bill Clinton walks into a McDonald's in Georgia where he's campaigning, and you can watch this on X. The young woman who is waiting on him looks at him in a red, white, and blue USA jacket, and she knows that she recognizes him. And what does she say? She says, "Are you Joe?" A reference, of course, to incumbent President Joe Biden. And the response, the audio is poor, but the audience from former President Clinton is, "No, I'm Bill. I am not Joe." I guess you get to a certain point. And of course, we have the story in the newsletter about what did he say about Laken Riley, and was that turned against him properly or improperly? Read that story too. But the funny story of the day to me is Bill Clinton being mistaken for Joe Biden, campaigning at a fast food place in Georgia. All right, go vote at Smerconish.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching on YouTube. I appreciate when you do both. And make sure you're voting on today's poll question of the day. It'll be very interesting to see which way this goes, where I am asking, should the U.S. send an anti-missile system and 100 troops to Israel. God forbid something happens, that's going to cause an escalation, and the United States will be knee-deep in it. As I said, if the question were simply, do we send them a missile system, I think that everybody would say, yeah, that's something we want to do. But 100 troops, this takes it now to a whole new level. All right. Thank you. See ya.